Witchcraft and Fury, Chronicles of the Divided Isle, Book 1. Chapter 1, The Smuggler. Though their magic be unique in its evil, witches die like any other monster. Their blood runs red, and their innards reek. Door lintel inscription, Executioner's Dungeon, City of Falcontop. The traders were weary after their trek from the dark forest below to the city on the hill, their clothes stained with dirt and sweat. They queued sweltering in the merciless sun before the city walls, which rose so high they had to crane their necks to make out the battlements. They were restless and hungry, but still they moved no closer to entering Falcontop's shaded streets. There was a hold-up at the gates. Captain Grubber, commander of the city watch, was a man who knew an opportunity when he saw one. He was stationed at the city's eastern entrance, chest puffed out and standing as tall as his short stature would allow. He watched imperiously as his men, suited in armour and more heavily armed than a routine customs check would usually require, searched the wagons of those traders at the line's head. A guard, evidently thoroughly enjoying himself, pulled a bald man with a scruffy beard from his cart and dragged him before the captain. "What have we here, Watchman Farron?" demanded Captain Grubber. "This man claims he is a wool merchant, sir. Yes, on his cart, sir, I also found 3 silk scarves, undeclared. They're worth more than their weight in gold, they are, sir, and ought to be taxed. Bring me the silk for inspection." "I've already paid my tax," protested the bald man. "I paid it at port, to the king's men. You have no right to tax me again for merely entering the city." "Quiet, unless you want to spend market day in the city dungeon." The merchant fell silent, and Grubber glared balefully at him. "Now, at current rates in the city market, you could earn 30 gold coins for those scarves. But markets thrive only in peaceful cities. My men and I keep the peace, and it is only right that we should be well paid for our diligent service. Pay 15 gold coins now, and I will let you pass without further trouble." "15?" repeated the bald man, his voice quaking with rage and shock at the extortionate charge. "You will ruin me. I have a wife to support and 2 young girls." The Watchman Farron returned with the scarves folded in his arms. The captain took one and let it unfurl, eyeing the intricate pattern that shimmered in the sunlight. 12, and I will keep this scarf. I also have a wife to please." He mopped his sweaty brow with the scarf before stuffing it into a pocket. He looked up to see the merchant glowering at him. The captain glared back and said in a quiet, icy tone, "Well, pay up." The bald man did not move, and for a moment it seemed as if he might argue. The captain's fingers strayed to his sword hilt, and the soldiers of the city watch closed in, surrounding the man. The merchant realised it was hopeless protesting further. This was the king's representative, cheating honest people. He could go to no one for help. He counted out 12 gold coins from a money pouch, handed them to the captain and, with one final look of disgust, turned on his heel and climbed back onto his cart. Lifting the reins, he urged his 2 horses through the gate and into the city of Falcontop with an angry cry. The crowd plodded forwards a few paces, horses neighing, chickens clucking, and children complaining about the lack of shade. A portly wine merchant and his teenage son reached the captain, and soon they were protesting at having their goods inspected. One of the guards raised a threatening fist at the boy. Watching these events unfold was a 17-year-old girl clad in a faded brown tunic, who stood next in line behind the wine merchants. She was small and skinny, and her face had the pinched look of most low-born adolescents, as if she never quite had enough food to make up a full meal. She had bony knees and straggly, dirty blonde hair. Her face was grimy from days on the road, and she possessed no remarkable features or characteristics to differentiate her from the hundreds of other waifs in the long line of traders. This anonymity was something she welcomed, as she liked to remind herself no smuggler determined on avoiding the gallows wished to draw attention to themselves. Sola licked her lips, trying to work a little moisture into them. It did no good. Her mouth was as parched as the dusty road she stood on, and her lips were cracked. It had been a long journey, and the basket of eggs she carried on her shoulder was getting heavier by the minute. She dared not put it down for 1 second, though, for what lay at the bottom of the basket, hidden by the eggs, would raise more coin than she'd ever seen in her life. "I work for Mr. Boville," she murmured to herself, practicing her lines. "I've been trusted to bring his eggs to market. Mr. Boville's not a rich man, but if it pleases you, sir, please take 6 home for your family." She spoke with a strong Falcon accent. It was an accent often heard in the city's industrial quarter, as craftsmen bellowed to one another over the clanging of their tools, or in the back alley alehouses that served the city's poor. "I work for Mr. Boville," she began again, reciting the words like a prayer. I've been trusted. Would this cover story work? If her basket was searched thoroughly by the captain's men, she would not merely be taxed, she'd be lucky to escape with her life. Being left to rot in the dungeon would be the best she could hope for. For beneath Sola's eggs lay something that had been all but illegal in the kingdom of Ashwood for 100 years. Something you could only own if you were very wealthy, belonged to a noble house, or attended the royal court as an advisor to the king. It was a book, bound in luxurious leather, its pages lined with gold. Its contents were more extraordinary still. Incantations of a power few could even dream of, potion recipes that brought the drinker limitless fortune, and curses that could blight a family for generations. It was common knowledge that in the distant past, magical instruction had been available to all. But a century ago, King Campion the Austere ordered that all spellbooks were to be confiscated from the common folk, and all witches to be burned at the stake. Since that day, all magic academies and encampments had to be royally approved. It soon became tradition for these institutions to be attended solely by the younger sons of lords and ladies, whilst their elder brothers trained to become knights or waited to inherit lands and titles. Books of magic could still be purchased by ordinary folk on the black market, providing they had both the money and appetite for risk. That was the market Sola hoped to access in Falcontop. She had little interest in the official market of eggs, wool and wine. In front of her, the wine merchants were being subjected to a thorough investigation. Sola could see that they clearly had something to hide. The father sweated in the morning sun and bit his nails incessantly. His son hovered around the guards, watching their every move. The guards, however, evidently found nothing that they could impose an extra tax on, for they tossed the crates of wine they had unloaded back onto the wagon and shut its doors. The wine merchants breathed sighs of relief, but next thing they knew, a commanding voice rang out. Halt! Grubber, a smirk plastered over his face, strode round to where the guard stood at the back of the wagon. Not so fast, he said, giving his men a conspiratorial wink. I haven't had some fine red wine from a river for far too long. In fact, if I recall correctly, not since our two friends here last visited the city. He patted the two merchants on the back and reopened the doors. The father and son exchanged nervous glances as Grubber lifted a bottle off the dusty blanket that covered the wagon floor. 1115. Very good year, he said, reading the label. He touched the bottle under one arm, enjoying the merchant's unease. His eyes roamed carefully over the interior of the vehicle, taking in every detail. Finally, he spotted something that made him grin. Well, well, well. Master wine merchant, are you concealing a trapdoor in your wagon? The son, standing closest, peered inside and gave an involuntary groan. When removing the bottle, the captain had disturbed the blanket slightly, and now an iron latch protruded quite clearly. I wonder what he might be hiding in there. The captain's words were mild, but his tone was menacing, his voice so quiet that Sola, standing next in line, could only just hear. The father hurried to the captain's side and whispered, There's nothing there that you'd be interested in, Your Honour. That's where my lad and I keep empty wine bottles, that's all. As he spoke, he produced from inside his jacket a large leather pouch and pressed it into the captain's hands. There's 20 gold coins there, Your Honour. I'm sure a man of commerce such as yourself understands my meaning. Grubber looked the man in the eye for what felt like an eternity, but then he closed his fingers around the pouch and pocketed it. Done. But I'm warning you. If you mean to play this trick again next time you come to market, you had better have a pouch of equal value waiting for me. The captain raised his voice so that all could hear. Guards, let this man and his lad through. Gods, at least we found one pair of honest traders today. He gave an ugly bark of a laugh. Sola felt as if she'd had the wind knocked out of her. 20 gold coins? So that was the price for having the captain look the other way. She didn't have that kind of money. She did not even have a silver coin at present. She stood rooted to the ground. Grubber watched the wine merchant's wagon pass on through the gate and then turned round to face Sola and her basket of eggs. Step forward, girl. Let me see what you've got. He uncorked the Arevan wine with his teeth and took a great gulp straight from the bottle. A dark red stain trickled down his chin and dripped onto a silver, crescent moon amulet he wore over his leather jerkin. With his other hand he beckoned for Sola to come closer. This is it, she thought. I'm about to be caught. A book that had been banned from the common people under all 12 monarchs of the past century would be wrenched from her possession. She wondered what life would be like in the dungeons, deep underground and untouched by the sun. Or perhaps they wouldn't bother with the dungeons. Perhaps Grubber would have his men execute her on the spot. She was even more worried about her family. How would her bedridden mother and younger brother support themselves without her? She was all they had. She stumbled towards Grubber as if in a dream, her legs suddenly heavy. "I work for Mr. Boville. I got his eggs in my basket, and I'm bringing them to Grubber silenced her with a raised finger. "Spare me your drivel, girl. Guards, search the basket." A pair of tall, muscular guards closed in on her. Now I'm truly done for, thought Sola. Throwing caution to the wind, she thrust a hand into her pocket and pulled out 3 grimy copper coins. "If it pleases you, Your Honour, 3 coppers. I'll bring them next time, too. Every time I come to market, I'll bring this many, or more." Grubber looked at the coins as if they were dirt on his boots. He raised a calloused hand to strike her, but before he could bring it down, a figure in a moss-green cloak and with shoulder-length, golden hair stepped from the queue of traders to stand between the captain and Sola. He addressed Grubber calmly in an educated accent. "Haven't you forgotten something, friend? Your house is burning down." Sola had no idea what the stranger meant. How could the man possibly know if Grubber's house was on fire? Was it a threat? Grubber for a moment looked just as confused, but then he drew his hand back further and aimed a slap at the man's face. The stranger blocked it, catching Grubber firmly around the wrist. When he spoke, his voice oozed authority. "Let the girl pass. I would be delighted to pay you with a vial of medicine for doing so. Medicine that makes a short man such as yourself grow tall and strong. That is my offer, and the only offer that you will receive. Take it. No one here will think any less of you, but nor will they envy you should you refuse." The stranger was tall, one of the tallest men that Sola had ever seen, and he had a lithe, athletic frame. His startling blue eyes fixed Grubber with a relentless gaze. His free hand rested on the leather-bound hilt of his sword sheathed at his belt. There was no insecurity in his stance, only menace. As he continued to stare down the captain, Sola was reminded of the predatory focus of a wolf. Grubber was a couple of heads shorter than the stranger. Sola could clearly read on his startled face his rage at the man's manner, coupled with sheer incredulity at the unorthodox offer. Yet the captain's willpower and bullying resolve dwindled visibly under the stranger's intense stare. "Fine," he snapped bitterly. "You think I don't have more important demands in my time than quibbling over whether this wretched girl enters or leaves?" The man did not answer, but pressed into Grubber's hands a tiny, teardrop-shaped glass bottle of emerald green liquid. "The city has no lack of brothels, friend," Grubber said as he pocketed the bottle, his lewd tone carrying to all around. "A man like you has no need to pick up unwashed waifs at the city gate to meet his needs." The man ignored him, and the guards stood back to let Sola and the tall stranger into the city. None of them had laughed at Grubber's comment, and most wore looks of amazement that their commander was allowing himself to be insulted and overruled. Seeing his men's expressions, the captain's cheeks flushed. As Sola and the stranger passed, Grubber shot out a hand and grabbed a fistful of her hair. He hauled her towards him, twisting cruelly. She let out a sharp cry, her face contorting in pain. "You'd better watch your back, girl," he snarled in her ear before shoving her roughly after her protector. Sola followed the stranger through the city gate, just as taken aback as anyone else by how things had developed. Who was he? Why had he helped her, Sola, a common girl with a basket of eggs? Immediately within the gate was Falcontop's main street. It wound its way through the low-rent neighbourhood where Sola lived with her family, a district characterised by a maze of tumble-down houses and the squalling of children, before reaching the city centre with its great mansions, luxury shops, and monumental statues of long-dead heroes. She had barely taken a few steps along this road when the cloaked man gripped her firmly around the arm and dragged her into a nearby alley. "Now, girl, I would like to know the contents of your basket," he said coolly, once they were alone. "Tell the truth. I have no time for falsehoods." The truth, thought Sola. The truth is that in my basket lies something powerful beyond the limits of your imagination. In the wrong hands, it could threaten the lives of everyone in the city. In the right hands, it could bring the men of Grubber's pathetic city watch to their knees. After I sell it, I'll have enough money to pay for passage across the White Sea, strike out in foreign lands, and rescue my father from whatever evil holds him there. The truth was a dangerous thing. "Nothing but chicken eggs," she answered, looking at him with defiance. "I'm not a fool, girl. Show me, or I will look myself. I do not wish to take what you are hiding from you, merely to know for what we have both just risked our lives." "Why did you help me?" "I have always found cause to sympathise with beggars, thieves, and smugglers." "I'm not a smuggler. said Sola. The man raised a golden eyebrow. Is that so? Even in the murk of the alley, he was strikingly handsome, with tanned skin that accentuated the piercing brightness of his eyes. A bow was slung across his back, and there was something of its suppleness and energy in his own movements. His tone was friendly enough, but his words were delivered in a confident drawl that suggested he was used to being obeyed. She sighed and handed him the basket. Taking little care not to break the eggs, he rummaged to the bottom and extracted the book. He gave Sola an appraising look. An instructive manual in wizardry. Well, of all the things I expected to pull from this basket, such a book was last on the list. He opened it and scanned the inside cover. Where did you get it? Sola decided to be honest. After all, hadn't the man just said that he had a soft spot for thieves? I stole it. Stole it? How? Once a year, a ship from the arid lands berths at Queensport and delivers the latest books written by foreign magicians. The king's wizards study these so they can keep up with advancements in magic abroad. Queensport isn't far, just a couple of days' walk. I am familiar with the place. Well, each book can fetch a fortune on the black market. The ship always arrives in the final week of August. I made sure I was at the port, waiting, well before then. I kept watch 3 days, and when the ship finally arrived, I made myself useful and helped unload the cargo. The ship's skipper gave me 3 coppers once the job was done, and no one noticed when I swiped a book from the top of a crate. You have an unusually thorough understanding of the trade in magic books for an egg vendor, said the man. And not many girls your age would dare to make the journey alone to Queensport, steal a forbidden book, and smuggle it past the notorious Captain Grubber. Sadly for you, though, the book is next to worthless. Sola was aghast. Worthless? I don't believe you. I've read some, and it's the real thing. What do you know about wizardry anyway? Only the youngest sons of noble houses get schooled in magic. I'm just a doctor who sells medicines, but even a doctor can see when a magic book has not been stamped. He tossed it to Sola. There, you see? The inside cover. It's blank. No one is going to buy that. I don't understand. Why does it need to be stamped? Because according to the laws of the arid lands, all magic books have to undergo safety checks. Those that pass receive a stamp of approval. Those that don't are thrown in the fire. Yours seem to have been shipped to Queensport through some kind of error. It could contain incorrect spells, be dangerous, or even have a life of its own. You won't find a buyer willing to touch it with a 6-foot pole. Sola stared at the blank cover, furious at both herself and the mysterious stranger. The past week had been an entire waste of time and effort, and all hopes of peddling her contraband for enough coin to search for her father had vanished. So where did a commoner such as yourself learn to read? Asked the man, ignoring her distress. My father taught me. He's the smartest man I know, the best reader of all the carpenters in the city, she replied, snapping the book shut. And your intelligent, literate father lets his daughter roam the country thieving? He went to the arid lands, fighting the king's wars, but never returned. At home it's just my little brother, sick mother, and me. I do what I must to support them both. The doctor looked at her in silence. Sola began to wonder if she was required to say something more, and so eventually she added, Thanks for what you did earlier with the captain. He gave a curt nod of acknowledgement and farewell before pulling up his hood and walking briskly down the alley. Wait, shouted Sola, who had suddenly thought of numerous questions she needed answering, but he had already turned a corner and was out of sight. What kind of doctor carried a bow and looked so comfortable wearing a sword, and an expensive sword at that? And what had he been doing queuing with the traders? He didn't seem to have any goods to sell, unless he had more bottles of so-called medicine under his cloak. She couldn't say why, but she had the faintest suspicion that he may have been following her all morning, since before she had reached the city gate.